Welcome back to Practical Parenting, the podcast that helps empower parents in the trenches, find joy in the process, and thrive through it all. I'm Krystina Wales, here with my co-host, Dr. Terry Nguyen, Chair of Pediatrics at GBMC Healthcare. So for the next 3 months, we'll be tackling what Dr. Nguyen calls the trifecta of health. So these are 3 foundational pillars we all need to focus on to practice better health. And luckily for us, they're pretty simple concepts. Though with children, they can present challenges for us as parents. So we'll go over nutrition and movement, but first up is today we'll be tackling sleep. So for those of you watching on YouTube, I am really bringing some dedication to my craft because I have a lot of bags under my eyes. So sleep is complex with kids. We know that they need it, but we can't force them to get it. So that's the tough part that we all struggle with. So we're going to review some common sleep problems today at different stages, and then recommendations for how we as parents can support. So hopefully we'll stick with our mission and find joy in this process. So before we go into sort of the different stages, let's talk about the importance of routines and kind of like optimal conditions for sleep, because this is sort of applicable at all ages, right?
Absolutely. This is a great topic because you will find joy in sleeping after this.
Crossing my fingers.
Yes. And it's a really common problem at every age, Krystina. So you're not alone in this, right? So the percentages are like up to 20-25% of children and adults. So, there's a wide range, but at any stage in life, there's a good, 20 to 25% of people at different stages and ages, and it gets worse actually with as you age older, having issues with sleeping. So routine and consistency, we love this. I love this as a pediatrician. I talk about routine and consistency, and it carries us our whole life. For children, they need to know what the bedtime routine is, and the bedtime routine, I call it the 4 B's of bed, which is take a bath or a shower, brush your teeth, read a book with your child, and then go to bed. Notice there were no electronics in there. There was no TV. There were no video games. So really soothing activities. That's what, a warm bath or shower could do. And then, you brush your teeth and you're kind of in your zone, brushing your teeth and flossing, and then reading a book. And then lights out and bed. So just as children function really well when they know what to expect, guess what? Us adults do too, right? And then what's that environment that we want to have for sleep? Dark room, cool to cold air temperature. And that's a biggie. And I think many people may not realize it. And right now, as we're recording this, we're in the deep days of August here in Baltimore. And you want the optimal, it depends on your body temperature and your family's, but you want to feel almost cold if you were outside of your sheets. That's why they keep department stores really cold too. It's much more relaxing. And when you're relaxed, you're going to be able to sleep, or you're going to be more tempted to buy. Yeah. So the temperature is key. The darkness is also key. And one of the things with the darkness is you don't want to have exposure to bright light within an hour if you're falling asleep. So no electronics or, TV, screens, your phone. I know there can be that blue light filter, but how about you just don't do it, okay? Because when you're on any kind of electronics, you're engaging your brain and you're trying to go into relaxation mode. So let go of those electronics an hour before bed. Don't bring electronics into the bedroom, of course, unless you're a doctor and you're on call, like I am this week. And then other things, caffeine. Now, we know caffeine is a stimulant, and it can last in your body for 6 to 10 hours after you ingest it. So a good rule of thumb is no caffeine, no caffeinated drinks, or even chocolates have caffeine, right? After 12. So that's the big caffeinated drinks. But, if you're going to have a piece of dark chocolate after dinner, please don't say that. Dr. Terry said no dark chocolate because it's really good for you also. And then exercise. Exercise every day. And I'm kind of allergic to the word exercise. So I say movement. Any kind of movement, routine movement every day. And for children, we recommend an hour every day of play. and preferably outdoors as long as the weather is permitting. That fresh air, the vitamin D from the sun, and just being able to be free is so key. And it's the physical, you have to physically make yourself tired. Okay. So I have some children who are very, very physically active, but their head hits the pillow and they're out in less than 5 minutes. And it's because they've exhausted themselves physically and their body has nothing else to do but to, go into slumber when they hit the pillow. And
now, I have found that there's a fine line, and my children are 5 and 3. There's a fine line between exhausting your body and being overtired.
Absolutely.
How do I hit that sweet spot?
Yeah. So absolutely. That was a great point. You don't want to, okay, let's be concrete. If your child is a preschooler under 5 and you routinely need to sleep and have a nap, they miss their nap, they are going to be overtired, right? Because they already have a sleep deficit going into the evening. And so that's going to get you in trouble. Maybe you do the bedtime routine earlier so that, because as their exhaustion grows and as their deficit grows, right, because it's now it's past where I should have gotten 1 to 2 hours of rest in the afternoon, but I'm still going, That's it. They have no reserve. That window of tolerance that we talked about on our microdose episode, whoosh, it's like not even there. So you kind of have to know what's been going on in the day and what that activity level has been. Does that get at your question, though? I want to be
a little bit, yeah. I mean, my oldest, so she hasn't taken a nap since she was probably 2.5. So this we've been used to the no nap situation, and she's a very physical kid. So definitely we try to get her like a lot of activity during the day. But then sometimes we get to bedtime and it's like, I don't know if we haven't done it enough, or sometimes it feels like you can tell she's tired. She just won't rest. And maybe that's overtired. Maybe that's anxiety. Maybe that's could be a whole host of other things. Probably fighting it.
Yeah. So when you say that's like a consistent nightly routine for her, it makes me wonder if she's fighting sleep because she has FOMO. She has fear of missing out. And that's very common, and especially
that's definitely true.
Yeah, and at the age that you're talking about, that's not necessarily overexhaustion. I get it. Like especially in younger, like even babies, they have a window of period in which they're awake between their feeds, and if you overdo that because you're at a party or something, your infant is a miserable soul because they've missed that little time window to go back to sleep. But I think in this with your child, so that's why I was talking about the child who missed their afternoon nap, if that's what they routinely do, or the child who stayed up much later last night but still got up at the same time. Right. So they have sleep deficit there already, right? So their window of tolerance for anything out of the norm or out of their regular routine is really, there's no window of tolerance at all. But I think what you're talking about with your own daughter is she doesn't want to go to bed. It's bed delay tactics. And I think we're going to talk about that further also. So, how do you set up a routine to counter that? So she's pushing back. And what you want to do is not to push back against her as well. You kind of want to pull her along. Okay, so you see, like she's pushing against going to sleep. And now you're pushing her to go to sleep. What if you, work together and pull her into the bed and pull her into the slumber, right? Because you can see those images. They're very different. And she's definitely, has all these reasons probably. Like, oh, I need water. I need to see. And then, but also underneath that layer, there might be she's fearing the dark, nightmares. So we kind of have to tackle each one of those in their due time, basically, right? What are you worried about? What are you scared of? Let's do a room check. Let's check in the closet. Let's check in the bed, under the bed. You can do, and you have to wait until they tell you what it is that they're scared of, right? And then you do the check with them. And then, would a nightlight be helpful? Would a light in the hallway? And again, you get them out because you're giving them the options to put them in control, right? Because what she's fighting for is for her to say, this is the time I'm going to bed. But be present with your child. You're here. You're now. This is their bedtime. this is their routine.
Yeah.
Remember, you can't enforce a routine that they don't like, right? You can give guidelines and, guardrails, but then you've got to accept it. And just like temper tantrums, remember, we accept that once they've spiraled and they're in a temper tantrum, they're going to have to go.
Right.
So this is her version of the bedtime routine. And it's going to be different. I mean, then there will be parents who tell me, but then it's like they're up and, they're up, they're going to the bathroom, they're up, they're going to get water. Yours is in bed. She wants you just nearby. Okay. It's not easy, but it's easier. Okay. What you want is presence. All right. I'll sit here. And maybe you listen to an audiobook in one ear while you're physically present for her.
Or for those listening, just put practical parenting into your ears.
That's right. You can listen to Krystina and Dr. Terry and go, oh, yeah, I can do this. Yeah. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we sort of rolled into the toddler portion. So I think all of these stages, honestly, we could probably tackle in its own podcast because there's so much information. But I think we sort of talked about it in 4 different stages in terms of infant sleep, toddler sleep, school-aged, and then adolescence. So why don't we just start youngest to oldest and we'll do infants. So it's very popular. Parents want to sleep train their kid. And for those who are listening, I'm doing the quotes because it's, we don't train our kids to do anything, in my opinion. Feel free to disagree.
No, I agree.
So, but I think there are probably some things we can do to, help our infants learn, to sleep independently for the most part, because I can tell you from personal experience that you do that and then they become a toddler and you have to do the whole thing all over again.
You're redoing training at every stage. But remember, because you're the parent, you've learned from every prior stage. Mm-hmm. So you're going into the next stage with more tools and more self-command. And you kind of know, what are the pain points for your child and how to maneuver around them.
Sure,
because our whole life as parents is learning to adjust to our children. They don't adjust to us. It's how are we going to be flexible and kind of
be Alfred.
Be Alfred, right? Be Alfred the butler and go with the flow and offer them what they need. There's a lot more peace in your household when you try to, go with the flow rather than trying to push against I'm not good at idioms, but push against something else. Mm-hmm. So pulling along rather than pushing your child, right? So yes, sleep training, that's the common term, so we'll say that. But 2 big popular methods, really, crying it out and what I call the camping. The camping method. And that's what you were doing by staying in your child's room, by the way. Okay. So the crying it out, and you don't want to do this until your child can sleep for 4 to 5 hours on their own. Okay. And usually we don't recommend sleep training until about 4 months of age, because any younger than that, there's probably a need that they have. So you don't want to just ignore your crying
They're
child.
still definitely getting up, I would think. Maybe not every 2 hours, but at least
every 3 to 4,
Sure,
they need to eat. But honestly, solidly by 6 months, they don't need to get up to eat, and they can sleep for stretches, and for sure by 9 months. So kids who are on formula, there's nothing that's a definite number in kids,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So approximately around 6 months. For formula-fed children, they should be able to give you a 5 to 6 hour stretch. And then for children who are breastfed, for sure by 9 months, okay? Now, there will be, players out there who are outliers. So I'm sorry for the parents who have children who are outliers out there. So crying it out somewhere between 4 to 6 months. And it was the Ferber method, Dr. Ferber, who promoted this. And he was pretty strict about letting your child cry it out. So we have a softer version now where, you let your child cry for progressively longer periods of time before you check in on them. And different parents have different levels of tolerance of hearing their child cry. I mean, there's a reason why, especially for mothers, you have letdown of milk when your child is crying, because it's a protective mechanism. Your child's probably hungry maybe, and you want to tend to your child. And that's why, we survive into our 80s and 90s, because we know how to care for one another. So it's not all bad, but, can you tolerate, your child, let your child cry it out for longer periods every night. And what I like about this method is it's the quickest way to, train or help your child achieve independent sleeping, your infant, okay? Independent sleeping. Because usually by nights 5 to 7, they are able to put themselves, to sleep without you there. So the rule here is put the infant into bed before they're fully asleep. If you're rocking them, when the eyes are fluttering, that's when you want to lie your baby into their crib. And one of the things that you could do is also put one of those receiving blankets into your bed sheet so that they still sense your smell when they're in their own crib. Okay, so there's still that scent there. And, they may end up waking up and crying, but that's okay. You can pat them. You can put a pacifier in. Resist pulling them out of the crib just because they cried. So you may stick around for a little bit and then leave, and, have longer periods in which they are left alone crying. And I know many parents will be focused on that baby monitor. And I'm going to say, maybe you try not being focused on that baby monitor. And usually out of a pair of parents, there's usually one parent, okay, that may be a little bit more tolerant of the crying. I would suggest that that's the parent that's in charge of doing this, because I think I couldn't have done it. My child cried, and I would have to tend to him or her. Maybe I could go for about 5 minutes. And then I was like a crazy maniac, like, and whereas my husband was like, yeah, the baby's crying, whatever. I can go on and do my thing. So first night is the roughest night. So please do it like towards the weekend, not like the next day and you have a big meeting at work, because it'll be a disaster. And it gets easier every night. Okay, so that's crying it out method. And the other one is called the camping method, and it's exactly what you're doing. So you stay in the room with them until they fall asleep. And then you stay with them shorter and shorter amounts of time. And this may take 2-3 weeks, okay? But it's a slower and maybe a kinder thing that may sit better with some parents, right?
And are you still doing the same thing, like just patting them, resisting picking them up?
Right.
Okay.
And you're just kind of camping out in the room with them, okay? And then you leave. And then, you extend the periods in which you're away from your baby. So those are the two things that I would recommend for infant sleep training. I think we kind of talked about toddler sleep training.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest transition there is just, they're going from the crib to more of a big kid bed. And so there's I don't know what it is about the physical railings that's like the deterrent, but now they can actually get up and come get you and come out of the room and ask for the water and things like that. Yeah. So, you're sort of redoing this all over again, practicing staying in the bed and things like that. So yeah, I think we have some good.
So one of the things I would add to the toddler thing is they love rewards, right? So
we started a chart.
Awesome. So maybe
we're calling it the independence. We have an independence chart and a bravery chart, because I'm not actually big on rewards, so I tried to put my own little twist on it. Yeah. But so they get an independence sticker if they stay in their bed, and fall asleep on their own. They get a bravery sticker for staying in bed at night. Like if they wake up at night and they don't come get me, but they stay in and fall back to sleep. So if I haven't had to rehome a child during the night, then they get a sticker the next morning.
Great. Now, do they respond well to these stickers?
They do, yeah. I mean, it works, sometimes they still get up and they just don't get a sticker.
Yeah. So the key here is it's not so much the reward, it's motivating them, right? And so that's what you're doing by offering a reward. Mm-hmm. And when I say reward, it can be stickers. It can be another bedtime story. Usually it's something to do with more time with you, okay? And you want to do, like 2 to 3. I would say about 3 activities. So one's kind of a gimme that they can accomplish pretty easily. And then there's the 2 that you're working on. So, going to sleep in the bed and then, going to sleep the whole night in the bed without. And if you get 2 out of 3, there might be a reward, in the morning. And then if you do 3 out of 3, a bigger reward. And then if you do 2 or 3 days in a row, then because you need immediate rewards and then you need something for them to work towards as well. Okay. And 2 or 3 days. And that's how I would do the reward thing. And it's got to be things that matter to them.
Yeah.
Like for my son, I was like 10 more minutes of electronic time. That did it. For my daughter, believe it or not, it was candy. But that worked because that's what she was zoned in on. So, what's the motivator for your child? And then if you have 2 children, oh my gosh, make it a competition between the 2. What do siblings love? They love to compete.
Okay.
And what's the next level? And then you have to remember that you want to change it up every, 2 or 3 weeks. And when it becomes too easy and the streaks are like daily that they've accomplished it all, come on, it's time to change it up, okay? So that's something that something else that I might add. And that would even work with young school-age children,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, because we're starting to get into the routines now of
Yeah.
school and, then you got to adjust for the summer and adjust back to. So, yeah, I love this.
Great. And speaking of school starting really soon around the corner for some of our children, if you have school-age children and high schoolers, really, you want them to get acclimated to school hour sleep because God knows, what time everyone's been going to bed all summer. So let's bring it on in. And I say within 2 weeks of the start of school, and for us in Maryland, it is within 2 weeks with the start of school, it takes about a week to go back every hour. So let's say you have a child who's now going to bed at 11 and that their bedtime is at 9 o'clock. Yeah, get on it pronto. Okay, so we'll do half an hour for the couple of nights and then we'll do another half an hour. And then it's just so that you prep your child so that not the night before they go back to school and they have to suddenly be in a different time zone, basically, right?
I love this time zone strategy that you give to adolescents.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I say with adolescents. If you bring it as it's like jet lag, they're up until 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning on the weekends and in the summer, and then they're back on Sunday night into Monday, having to go back to the 11 o'clock, 10 or 11 bedtime. It's impossible.
You're jet lagged on Monday.
Yeah, you're jet lagged, right? Because 2 hours difference makes a big difference.
Sure.
3 hours makes a huge difference. Come on, just think about your, flights to the West Coast between the East Coast. I mean, that kind of wreaks havoc for a day or two.
Sure.
And for the adolescents, they're doing this weekly. If they're up late 2 nights a week on Fridays and Saturdays, and then you were expecting them. That's why many of them look like they're hungover on Monday.
It's such a good reframe when you think about it that way.
Yeah. So, and bring it up to them that way. And, my favorite thing is, what time do you go to sleep on the weekends? What time do you wake up on the weekends? That's your body's natural sleep preference. Because I can give you the guidelines, and I will, for what is, this recommended sleep from the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Sleep Association for children and adults at different ages. But the important thing is to individualize it for your child. So if on the weekends you're sleeping at midnight and you wake up at 10, well, you need 10 hours of sleep, okay? So on the weeknights, you're going to bed at 11 and you're waking up at 6. You got 7 hours. So maybe you can't get the 10, but how can we get you as close to that as possible? And I'd like you to do the math with your child or your adolescent. And then you kind of have to get them to say, so, okay, we can't negotiate what time you get up for school because this is the time you have to get up. So what else can you do? And they're going to say, go to bed earlier. And I say, hey, will you repeat that for me again? And they're like, go to bed earlier. I'm like, yes. Okay. And then, but then that's the part where you negotiate like, so what's realistic for you? We know that you're sleeping 7 hours and your body wants 10. You can't make up for it after the fact. But, what's realistic for you? How can I help you? Right? And so there's some control in there for them. So that's that's the sleep thing. So did we ever talk about how many hours of sleep kind of by age?
No, I mean, we can run through it. Like I said, or like you said, I feel like, that's something they can easily look up,
Yeah.
but we don't want to get too fixated
Yeah,
on that because
exactly.
of how individualized it is.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on briefly just melatonin and other sleep aids. They've been in the news. We've talked about it before, but just when it might be appropriate and when we should really be focusing more on those optimal conditions for sleep.
That's great. I love optimal conditions for sleep. It's all about behavior and lifestyle. That should be your number one go-to.
Is that something you can continue over the long term?
Exactly. Any kind of medication, melatonin, or any kind of supplements, those are, once in a while. They should not be part of your go-to bedtime routine, okay? Because if you need something every night, then there's something in your everyday life that isn't conducive to you falling asleep at night, okay? For the younger children, is it fear of the dark, fear of monsters? I don't know. Separation anxiety, fear. And then for older kids, it's probably social media. Like they can't get off of it. And guess what? The social media's got the blue lights. And it's actually causing more angst, anxiety, and worries that, you're not keeping up with your friends and your peers. So that is not conducive to sleep, right? So what are the things that we can do, lifestyle, to help you with sleep? Make sure that, you're not eating right before bed. There's no caffeine. There's no blue lights and electronics. The room is cool and it's dark. And you're doing things that relax you. Okay, whether it's reading or listening to music or having a sound machine, any of those things. And then the other thing, if you're a worrier and your mind is racing before bed, mind dump, please, mind dump. And what does that mean? Whether you write out every thought in your head, just write it out. You can keep a journal if you want to, or if you'd rather, just like, okay, I'm going to write it out. I'm going to rip it up and throw it away because I've acknowledged those thoughts. But now they're out and they're gone, and I can go to bed with a clear slate. I think that's really key, is doing the mind dump, okay? If you're a person who tends to ruminate or, kind of replays the day or is worried about what's to come tomorrow, do the mind dump. Journal, write it out. I'm not going to say to put it on your phone because that means you'd have a phone there, okay? And then if those things, physical activity is really helpful to make you tired, but please don't do that before bed, okay? Because then your body's like, oh, yay, I'm up, right? So keep that extreme physical movement to, 2 or 3 hours before bed. But if you want to do yoga stretches, that's really good and relaxing for your body. There's meditations, there's guided imagery to help you go to sleep. And I know we'll touch on that for another episode, but all calming and relaxing things, okay? So when would you use melatonin? Melatonin is a chemical that all of our bodies make as soon as it gets dark out. So that's why we want to avoid the blue lights or any bright lights, because then it throws your body off and it says, oh, it's daytime again. I'm going to stop making melatonin. You need that natural melatonin to fall asleep. But, you're off cycle, you've been traveling, so you may need the melatonin to help you fall asleep. That would be appropriate at really low doses. So I am seeing over-the-counter melatonin at 5 milligrams and 10 milligrams. Guess what? The research shows as low as 0.3, 0.5, up to a milligram, maxing at 3 milligrams for melatonin in the half an hour to an hour before you go to sleep. That's all you need. The other stuff, it's so high that you're going to suppress your own body's production of melatonin. So when you're taking something, you really want to mimic what your body's doing naturally. And please be aware that not all melatonin is created equal. Not all sleep aids over the counter are created equal. They're not regulated by the FDA. So please look for the USP symbol or the consumer labels, Consumer Labs label. That means an independent authority has actually investigated and analyzed the contents of what's in their bottle and can verify that it is indeed what it says on the bottle. Because what research has shown is that sometimes 300 to 300 times the content of what's on the bottle. Okay. So we don't want to do that. And
Yeah.
then sometimes there's even cannabinoids mixed in there. So you want a product that's what it says on the label. So look for the USP or Consumer Labs verification there.
Awesome. Well, yes, I think we've tackled all areas of sleep. Lots of good strategies and information. And if you want to share on social media kind of your experience, maybe personal, any questions you have about sleep, we'll see if we can tackle them. But yes, until next time, we'll tackle the next two pillars. We'll see you then.
Great. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.